All right, today we're talking about how to get out of your way as a leader, how to build a business around your people with the right systems and processes in place so that you can lead. And my guest today is Chase Damiano. I'll tell you more about him in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show. And if you listen every week, then you've had some great guests on here. Recently, we've had all kinds of entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders of all kinds of different companies. We've had Kinko's, Netflix, YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Grubhub, Lending Tree. Check out the archives because we've got lots of great episodes for you there. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And you can learn all about what we do by going to rise25.com and also emailing us at support@rise25. All right, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to my buddies V Band over at Relatable, co-founder of Contactually, great guy, real leader in the entrepreneurial community in the Washington, D.C. area and nationwide. And he introduced me to today's guest, who is Chase Damiano. He's the founder of Humans at Scale, which is a leadership developing company dedicated to assisting entrepreneurial leaders to elevate their teams, to scale their businesses. And under his leadership, the company is catered to a range of different leaders, founders, executive teams, managers, which cumulatively represent about $100 million in annual revenue. And before establishing Humans at Scale, Chase served as the CEO of a national coffee brand, which we're going to be hearing about in a second, and also served in a role in a consulting company before that. And he's an alum of Virginia Tech and also the Goldman Sachs 10K Small Business Program, which is a great program my business partner participated in as well. And all right, Chase, such a pleasure to have you here today. And I want to hear about, I love to ask people about just a little bit about what they were like as a kid and kind of how they got started. And I know you did, I believe it was tutoring in high school is how you kind of got a little bit of the entrepreneurial bug. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Happy to be here. I think for me, a lot of my attention in childhood went towards building things. So I was really big into things like Legos. We sort of had this robotic type set called Capucella that is sort of like connect and make your own machines. I also spent a lot of times in creation and creativity, especially around video games. But I really started got the entrepreneurial bug with my tutoring business. So I needed a little extra cash in both late high school and early college, and that's how I got started from a teaching angle. I was gifted in things like math or chemistry, even the harder chemistries as well. And I love teaching. I love being able to be with a student, to watch them have insights and breakthroughs. And that was a great source of side income for quite a long time. I loved it.
It's kind of funny now that you mention it. I'm remembering now that I did a little bit of tutoring in high school also. Kind of forgot about this. And there was a girl that I tutored that ended up going to a much better college than I went to. So I don't know what I was doing wrong, but hopefully it worked for her. So now one of the challenges with that is, you oftentimes it's just you, or did you figure out like hiring your friends and having them do tutoring? You took a cut of it, or did it was it just kind of like something where, it was your time that you put into it and you got paid good money for it?
So I started building a team when I became a undergraduate TA. So there was a large chemistry, intro to chemistry lecture that was happening at Virginia Tech, and I had the honor and the privilege of being one of the teacher's assistants. So as a result of that, I had my own discussion section. So I had students that I can really call my own, and usually about 80 of them per semester. And in that, my responsibilities really were to teach a little bit in our weekly class, but also to grade all of the homework and then to input the grades in there. And grading homework was very tough. It was so hard. So that's when I started building my team, and I would have stacks of homework papers And I would just go up. I would go to my fraternity brothers and be like, "Hey, I'll pay you X if you're able to grade. Here's all the rubric, and just have the report in." And they did it, and that helped me learn how to lever my time from a really early standpoint. It was awesome.
Yeah, that worked out well. All right, so you graduate with a degree in chemical engineering and economics from Virginia Tech, and so naturally you go and start a coffee company, right? Like totally logical. That would be the next step. But you have one stop in between where you go and pay off some of those college loans, working in consulting. But you end up going to a startup weekend, I believe it was, and that kind of re-inspired a desire to start your own company.
Yes. So while consulting, I heard about Startup Weekend, which for those that don't know, it's something like 60 hours. You have 60 hours over a weekend to go from ideation to some sort of presentation. For some, it might be a product. For some, it might be just a sketch of what you want to do, and you present to a panel of judges and can receive cash in order for you to go and build your idea. And the team that I was part of, we won second place in the competition, just going from 0 to 100 right there. And I loved it after that. I felt just a strong sense of like, hey, every ounce of effort that I put into this can pay dividends in exactly what I get out the other end, and then learning to again leverage that so it can compound even more. And after that, I was hooked. It's like I have to find a pathway into entrepreneurship. I have to build something of my own.
And was the idea that you developed at that startup weekend what became the coffee company, or was it something different entirely?
This was different entirely. It was called Das Biermacher, which means the beer maker in German. And what we had designed was a system to allow you to home brew beer, but for consumers. So if you think about the Keurig for coffee, where you just put in a pod and then brew through the device and out comes your coffee, we thought of that for home brewing and just like automate the process so that you would have to do very, very few tweaks to a recipe in order to make pretty okay quality homebrew beer. So that was our positioning. The idea never took off after startup week, but that's what it was.
Did you ever explore whether that was technologically feasible? Because it sounds like a cool idea, actually. I'm like, geez, I'd Keurig for beer. I like that.
So within the 60-hour time frame for delivering the proposal, we did the best that we could to figure out, is it technologically feasible? Had something else like this been done? And after the 60 hours, we as a team met several more times in person to explore that. And we actually bought a bunch of things like percolators and water kettles and different devices to just learn how they work, so that we could get an idea for how the technology would work, but the idea sort of petered out after that. Yeah. So technologically possible, I think it still can be possible. So free idea for anyone out there that wants.
Well, I can see something. I can see kind of the strains of commonality in what would become your coffee company. I don't know if it was a direct correlation or if a direct line of sight from that idea to the coffee idea, but your coffee company was really doing, I believe, it was nitro cold brew in offices. So you sell it to offices. Nitro cold brew was becoming more and more popular. You see at Starbucks and places like that, but this was going directly to the offices where they had some, I don't know, pot of Senka or Folgers or something brewing in a corner. No one wanted to touch it, and giving them a nitro cold brew, which sounds super cool. So how did that idea come about?
So when the CEO and I were both in business together, we had both left our jobs to join Commonwealth Joe and get things started. We were originally thinking of a brick and mortar strategy in the DC area.
So creating another coffee shop,
building a network of them, hub and spoke type model. But
did you have an idea of how that would be different, or how it would compete with, all the dominant players like the Starbucks of the world?
Yeah, so back in 2015, when we were thinking about the approach for brick and mortar, there really were only two options for coffee in the DC metro area. One was Starbucks or larger chains, and then on the other side were a lot of small either mom and pop or boutique shops that may have had only one or two locations. There wasn't really anything in between that could act as a regional player. And so we saw that as a brand opportunity, and why we were able to differentiate. But, on the way, as we were raising capital, we realized that one of our other business lines that we had experimented with, actually as a means to promote our coffee shops, was taking off a lot faster organically than we ever thought. And what had happened is we created these little cold brew tricycles that we would have one of our team members ride around in popular metro stations in the DC area, mostly in Northern Virginia, and have sort of like a little stand that you can get one product, and it was cold brew coffee on draft. But what was happening is that during lunch hours, when folks would come out of their offices to the food trucks, they would get food truck and they would get their coffee and go back in. And eventually we started getting more and more inquiries. How can these employees just have that coffee available all the time? Because people were loving it. And so we put two and two together and then designed a scalable service that went with that, and ultimately ended up pivoting the entire business to focus just on that, just the service of putting nitro cold brew coffee into offices.
Now, coffee is kind of famously can be very high margin. Did you find that nitro was similarly high margin, or was it not as good a margin as regular coffee?
So coffee is really high margin, especially at point of service. So if you think about a coffee shop, it costs very little in cost of goods sold to then brew a pot of coffee, which is mostly made of water. And then from a COGS standpoint, it's very, very high margin there. However, when you think about that in the grand cost of running a coffee shop, the EBITDA left at the end is not exactly matching of those margins that you can capture. So cold brew was similar. At the unit level, the COGS for a single keg were great. Not as great as hot coffee brewed in a coffee shop, but they were still very fat. And then building out the distribution service consumed some of those margins to bring about the EBITDA.
Yeah. Now, when you were developing this, we were talking before, and you said there wasn't even like infrastructure in place. There wasn't anyone you could go to and just buy, I guess, a white labeled keg of this nitro coffee. So how did you develop it? Did you were you tinkering in your garage to figure out how to do this?
Step one was CEO and COO manually brew cold brew coffee in giant 5-gallon buckets, and then bottle them. But then we stopped bottling and then started kegging them. And I think when I got involved in it, we were doing something like 8 to 16 kegs a week. And so it was just a manual process. We built the company out of a carriage house out behind the CEO's house, which is just a little 200 square foot separated unit from the house. And we did everything in there. Then when we got our first coffee shop built, we moved everything over there. Volume started picking up a little bit, and then now we had a team to work with. But eventually it got to be too much. Like, we needed a lot more space if we really wanted to double down on this business line. But no one had ever created brewing equipment for cold brew coffee at scale.
Wow.
If there had been, then it was so severely protected and blocked from our knowledge. We couldn't find any brewing equipment manufacturers that knew how to do that. But we found
the
one
companies that were kind of innovating with cold brew coffee were really protective of what their processes were.
Keeping it close to chest. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But we ended up finding a brewing equipment manufacturer and consultancy in North Carolina that helped us design and create this equipment that never had been created before. So that was just like one of many decisions that, we couldn't call up someone and, like you said, say, hey, can you make us 10,000 kegs of this coffee?
Couldn't find anyone to do that. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. And as far as the beans go, that was probably, you could come about the beans, right?
Yeah, we had great importer and direct relationships to supply all the beans, although volume was very, very high. And so we had to secure long-term contracts to make sure our pipeline of product was secure at a price point that we could afford. And then we also roasted it ourselves too. So imagining that we imported, we roasted, then we ground it down, and then we brewed it, and then we kegged it, and then we delivered it and shipped it, and then installed it right to the customer all the way.
Wow, a lot. And then you have to explain to the customer how to maintain it or how to swap out a keg, right? Was that a challenge, explaining to them how to do all that?
Surprisingly, not as much and of course, some of this is logistically challenging. And of course, our company had an incentive so that the office manager, let's say, that was running it was the one to do all of the maintenance. We really built everything to be a turnkey service. If you had any challenge, if your keg was out, if your line was clogged, if your line was dirty, if you had any issue with anything whatsoever, we would always send someone out. We never wanted it to be a challenge or a task for our end customer, the office manager, who so graciously allowed us to come into the door and serve their whole office. So everything was always built off service.
And another challenge you had was last mile distribution. So actually getting it to the endpoint. Talk about that challenge.
Yeah. So when we were building this, although office distribution had been around ever since offices have existed, but a lot of those companies, they would either be delivering in large box trucks that were unrefrigerated, or smaller vehicles or vans, like a little bit more nimble, that could get to the office, but also unrefrigerated. And we had a spoilable product. Yeah. And so you then think the second one, can we try maybe beer distributors? Wouldn't they have, some more easy way to do it? But a lot of their trucks were unrefrigerated as well. Plus the number of kegs that would be required of them to drop off to make that stop profitable and worth it was also pretty high. And some of these offices we were serving were only going through 1 to 2 kegs a week. And so we ended up building our own last mile distribution service in-house to start, especially, which meant that we had Commonwealth Joe, and we still do to this day, Commonwealth Joe delivery drivers, W-2s, that are driving Commonwealth Joe vehicles. And they have installed their own refrigeration capacity to keep the product fresh.
Yeah, there's a lot more expense involved when you have to do all that yourself. Now, along the way, you had some major challenges. One was just you're close to closing an A round, and one of your venture investors, the primary venture investor, pulled out at the last minute, but also just burnout, overwhelm. You had some physical issues that were going on. Tell us a little bit about what you went through during this time.
Yeah, I think the going from startup to scale up is never easy. But I think myself, it was a defining moment around what type of leader was I about to be through this venture. And especially in the early days, there was a lot of work to be done and a lot of just number of hours that we're putting into the business. But one of the challenges that I experienced a little bit later in the business cycle, when we had plenty of resources, we had lots of team members, lots of employees, is that I had a very difficult time getting out of my own way. I essentially created a organization, especially within the operations side, that even though I had upwards of 40 people working on my team, I had always felt like really, really stuck in the day to day, working an inordinate number of hours, and never really recovering from this constant feeling of drowning and overwhelming, and how I experienced burnout. And it all hit ahead when one of my senior operations employees put in his notice, me thinking that finally there'd be something to help me get out of my own way, help me sort of get a better breath of air. Now felt I'm being reconsumed. I'm going back in a very negative way. And it was very taxing on my mental health. It was very taxing on my body to go through this experience. But ultimately, it led to me actually asking for help in a genuine way.
And you ended up getting a coach, actually, right?
I did. That was one of the many things I did in this vein of asking for help. I ended up getting myself a coach to like, please help me figure out how I can lead this team better, but also help myself in the same way.
What else did you do at the same time?
At the same time, I explored therapy. I explored other modalities to speak with people. I also explored having better connections in the entrepreneurial community. So many times, some of us will self-justify, oh, I'm too busy to like go to an event or build relationships because I'm working on my startup. Mm-hmm. And it's almost counterintuitive thinking to a degree. And so that was a real breaking point, was like, I have to find other people that I can better relate to, so I can share my experiences, but also hear some of them in the name of helping each other.
Yeah. And through this process, through working with the coach, you actually figured out that you liked this process so much that it was something that you wanted to step aside from from Commonwealth Joe, and devote yourself to coaching.
I did. Part of the training and coaching that I received is learning how to myself become a coach inside my own company. Essentially, instead of creating a business that was that had Chase in the very center, that everything had to go through Chase. Chase was involved in every piece, every step. That is what a bottleneck really being defined as. No wonder I was working so many hours. Mm-hmm. Really, I learned how to develop the people that I brought on, build the right systems and put in the right processes in place, and build the right relationships with the team so that they were empowered to go about fulfilling their responsibilities, but also 10 times better than I ever would have imagined.
And what were some ways that you deliberately pulled yourself away? Can you give me some examples of ways in which you kind of like took yourself out of that center and put others in place?
Yeah. So during this period of time, I remember that I was subscribed to every single Slack channel. I was a part of almost every recurring meeting that was happening on the calendar, just because I felt that as COO in the company, not only did I have to pay attention to the bigger picture that the CEO was working on, for instance, fundraising, investor relations, and growth and industry related change, but also everything down to the nitty gritty of the internal operation of the organization, from the product quality to the level of distribution, level of service that we're doing. And so I had to make a decision on where do I want to be spending my time, and how is that best used. And so it led to me essentially removing myself from almost every Slack channel and empowering someone else as a way to like take more responsibility for what was happening in that, which then led to promotions, and it also led to a coaching cycle. So I worked with each of my team members. We had weekly one-on-ones for 60 minutes each, every single week. It was non-negotiable, and always an invitation to the person on the other side of that. But people loved it. People loved me sitting in a position, not of me doing things for others, but guiding them, serving others, guiding them.
How many were you doing one-on-one 60-minute coaching sessions with?
5, 6, 7 a week.
So pretty, this is not a small commitment. So you must have really carved yourself out of these other recurring meetings in order to create the space and the time for you to be able to do that.
Right. And that was the trade-off. It was really one of having to let go of a piece of some responsibility that somehow I got stuck doing, and consciously delegating it, consciously building commitment around it. And then creating an environment where people could fail, that people can make mistakes and people can ask questions without fear of reprisal or any blame whatsoever. So in the name of their growth, because if they're growing, then the business is growing. And me as a team leader, I also don't get bogged down in all the details. It's really a triple win.
You have a specific approach to when you go into one of these coaching sessions, how you kind of connect with the person that you're going to be working with, get yourself into a flow state, how you support the clients that you work with. I thought that was really interesting. Can you kind of go through what your approach is?
Yeah, so I think the way I see my role as a coach is It's really my ability to hold space, but also be present and aware to a client's experience that they're having through whatever that experience is, as a way to be a mirror and reflect back to them what that experience is, so that they leave with some sort of insight. And for me, so beyond the basics of me getting great sleep every night, eating really well, being able to exercise and just sort of meditate every day, the fundamentals of fundamentals I find of living well. I also, in preparation for every client call and reading my client's goals, getting a better understanding and connecting is like, where are they really trying to be? And then passing them a intake questionnaire that they take every time before we have a conversation, so that they themselves also are prepared for our call. I find the coaching space to be really sacred. It is a place that people can feel vulnerable or open around whatever it is their experience or challenge is. And if I'm showing up in a way that is highly regulated and able to bear witness to what the client is going through, then that's gonna reflect on them. But if I'm coming in dysregulated, or if I'm got 100 other things going on, or if I even look physically distraught, then that is going to have an impact on the client experience that might not be in the best interest of them.
It's funny because my wife is a counselor at a community college, and so she similarly, similar to a coach, needs to sit in presence with someone, give them her full attention. And sometimes I'm not sure how she does it. And to me, it seems just that being present, that being focused, that giving someone 100% of your attention, not being distracted. Maybe me have a bit of ADD in me. Like, I don't know how I would manage to do that. But it's funny when you mention all these different things, like just getting good night's sleep, getting good feed, getting good food to eat for breakfast, working out can put you into that state so that you're able to be that presence for the clients.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And even as a ADHD person myself, it has also been a process to support me in my own journey around mental health, that these practices I help put in for myself. And I encourage my clients to do the same, to help them through their experiences as well. Yeah. And I will say I do have a single cheat code if you want to hear it.
Sure. Is it nitro cold brew coffee?
No, unfortunately, that I want everyone to know about that cheat code. But here's what I've done as a coach is, in order to help build my muscle around presence and bearing witness again to my client, is a lot of note taking. And so for me, were I to sit here and just have this conversation, and right away as I was becoming a coach, I would have I might have dissociated a lot or mind wandered a lot, and not really being able to listen and pay attention to like what a client is saying. And so the trick for me was to just continue to take notes, to write things down as the client was saying it, as I was responding to it, to write and learn how to write while listening. That always helped me pay attention, all my attention to my clients, but also leaves an artifact for our session. And I know now these days you can have AI transcriptions and whatnot, but there's a simple act of writing that has helped me stay focused and present while a client is speaking in a way that also helps them feel the most heard.
You mentioned earlier that you were a builder. Has it been hard for you going from the scenario where you have a startup and you're building this big startup together and you're building teams and everything, to this different scenario where you have clients and you're coaching all these different clients that are all with different entities, but it's not everyone rowing together, building the same entity together? Emotionally, has that been a shift for you?
I would say yes, but in a positive way. I get the I get the privilege of working with lots of different businesses in many different stages, all in different industries and business models, which has helped grow my awareness towards how other entrepreneurs are doing things, but also satisfies because I feel like I'm building right along with them. I create a connection that is like I'm really a part of their team. Although I don't have any authority on the team, it's all based on permission. I'm really here to help a CEO or founder or COO, CTO seize more power so that they can give it away to their team. Really tackling the either anxiety, sometimes self-doubt, or low confidence that they're experiencing within their startup, or perhaps it is they have so much energy that they don't know what to do with. And so like helping them organize and set a process and channel some of their wisdom into something creative for them that works for them gives me the feeling of being a builder.
That's great. I'm a big fan of gratitude, especially expressing gratitude publicly to those who've helped you along the way. A lot of times I find people are they kind of default to mentioning family or friends or team members, but I love to hear stories of peers and contemporaries, maybe even mentors that have been there for you at key, turning points in your journey. So who would you want to shout out?
Yeah. So first is to Jacob Garlick. Jacob, you were really there for us at Commonwealth, Joe, when we were in a position where we didn't know what else to do. We were very low on cash. Our investor just pulled out, and your support and your wisdom helped us through such an incredibly challenging time for both of us. So I want to share my gratitude first to you. And then second is Ree Perez. We met back maybe in 2019 or so and we've become long friends since. But you personally really supported me during a very challenging mental health period of my life. That was much more recently. Not only are you so gifted in everything, branding, marketing, and just living a better life, you also were there for me personally. And so for that, I thank you.
That's awesome. Chase, this has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you and learn more about Humans at Scale, your company?
So find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active. Come give me a follow at Chase Damiano, as well as check out humanatscale.com. And you can see a lot of the products, services, resources I have, case studies as well. And you can sign up for a free strategy session with me in which I'd love to share with you a little bit about how you might be able to run your business more effectively.
That sounds awesome. All right, Chase, thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.